Good Erev Shabbos, Parshas Bo. This week's Sedra contains the beginning of the end of Paro and his minions, the subjugation, the slavery, the oppression of Bnei Yisrael. And conversely, it is the beginning of the redemption and the bringing about the fruition of the promise of redemption to the Jewish people. And this all starts in the middle of one dark night. Vayehi b'chatzi alayla. It was in the middle of that night, at midnight. The slaying of the firstborn, Makas Bechoros, begins, and the concomitant exodus starts as well. However, the Mefarshim point out that when Moshe earlier reported this prophecy, what would actually happen, he seems to obfuscate. And instead of saying that Hashem will let the Jewish people out at midnight, he says midnight-ish. Kachatzos halayla. Around midnight, God will slay the firstborn and the Jewish people will leave. So why does Moshe try to obfuscate the last Makkah and Hashem's final hurrah with Bnei Yisrael and Mitzrayim? So there are three approaches I would like to share. The first is a grammatical approach. The second is a theological approach. And the third is a psychological approach. So let's start first with the grammatical or linguistic. What does kachatzos halayla actually mean? Rashi says, kachatzos halayla means when the night is divided. Chatzos halayla is not a noun. Chatzos halayla is a verb. The night is divided. Kachatzos halayla means as the night is divided, when the night is divided, i.e. midnight. The Avi Ezri points out, kitzei siyas ha'ir, when I leave the city. The k is not midnight-ish. It means when the following act will happen, when the night is divided. And that is precisely midnight. There is no distinction. There is no obfuscation. Vayehi b'chatzi halayla, and it was in the middle of that night. Moshe predicted kachatzos halayla, when God will divide the night. Perfectly consonant, perfectly resolved, if we simply understand the grammar. However, there is another approach, and that is a theological approach. The Kli Yakar says, kachatzos halayla means like the middle of the night, like a particular chatzos layla. Which particular chatzos layla are we talking about? All the chatzos layla that the Jews were slaves in Egypt. Because you see, says the Kli Yakar, that the Jews in Egypt did not have a very easy work schedule. They didn't get up at 8:30 and have a Danish and coffee and then show up to the shuttle at 9 o'clock and then are home at 5. No. Says the Kli Yakar, based on a reading of Rashi, that the Jews were woken up kros hagever when the rooster crows in the morning. And there are two kros hagevers. I'm not a farm boy, but apparently the rooster crows at around dawn, and then there's an earlier one around midnight. And so says the Kli Yakar, this what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying in the name of Hashem is, I am going to punish the Mitzrim. I am going to bring a consequence to the Mitzrim concomitant, corresponding to the suffering that they brought to you. Mida keneged mida. This is a theological axiom of Jewish life, that God brings consequences commensurate to the act that was originally done. They woke you up in the middle of the night to start your workday. They oppressed you by not allowing you to sleep. They oppressed you and worked you to the bone, starting your workday already around midnight. That's what I'm going to do to them. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, in the name of Hashem, kachatzos halayla. Just like your chatzos halayla was part of the oppression, kachatzos halayla, similarly, that's what I, Hashem, will bring the final makkah as a mida keneged mida. And that's what happens. Vayehi b'chatzi halayla. God shows up in the middle of the night and brings about the destruction of the final blow of the destruction of Egypt and the beginning of the Exodus. Mida keneged mida. However, there's a third and final approach, and this is a psychological approach, which, in part, based on something that I saw from Rabbi Fran. Rashi tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned about saying precisely the time that the Jewish people would be let out, precisely the time that God would show up. And so he intentionally obfuscated, and he said midnight-ish. Kachatzos halayla. Why, says the Medrash, quoted by Rashi? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned that if Hashem showed up a few minutes late, or based on the calculations of the Egyptians, it seemed to be a few minutes late, then Moshe Rabbeinu would be blamed, and Moshe Rabbeinu would be called a liar, and Moshe Rabbeinu, representing Hashem, would be discounted. And so in order to prevent this series of events based on a potential Egyptian error in calculations, Moshe Rabbeinu said midnight-ish, rather than saying precisely at midnight. And that would take care of a lot of problems later on. So I asked Rabbi Fran, is that really what we're concerned about? We're concerned that Hashem would show up at 12:02 or 12:04? Think about it. The Mitzrayim are witnessing Hashem's hand destroying the firstborn, as promised. The Egyptians are witnessing the 3 million people beginning their move out of Egypt. Not even a dog barking at this moment. And the Jews are doing whatever they need to do to prepare to leave. They're on the move. And so Hashem showed up a couple of minutes late. So what? But that's in fact the case. It is part of the human condition, of the reality of our psychology, that we sometimes tend to latch on to a small detail in order to discount the rest. It was in the Egyptians' best vested interest to say, listen, we have our beliefs. We have our stated beliefs. We know what we know, and we know what we think is right. And if we can somehow find, in their minds they're saying this, if we can somehow find a way to discount Moshe Rabbeinu, then we can go back to sort of living life the way we want to live it, to see life the way we want to see it. And so Moshe Rabbeinu would say, bachatzos halayla, and God would show up 2 minutes late. It doesn't make a difference. Everything they see, everything they're hearing, everything they're witnessing, the human mind has the grand capability to reinterpret everything in light of what we think we know. And that's exactly what the Mitzrayim would do. They say Moshe's a liar. Moshe is not reliable. Moshe Rabbeinu, it was not precise. He said 12 o'clock. God showed up 12:02. We're going to discount the whole thing. It's a tremendous capacity of a human being to deceive themselves in this way. But there's an additional layer here, and that is about seeing the good, the positive versus seeing the negative. It is true that 98% of what Moshe Rabbeinu said was coming true, but 2% would seem to be false. So you have a choice. Do I look at the 2% which seems to be inaccurate, or the 98% which seems to be coming true? And the Mitzrayim, Moshe was concerned, would look at the 2% over the 98%. And it's true for the Jews as well. You know, we tend to be able to see the negativity in things rather than the positivity. There's a famous story, I don't know if it's apocryphal or if it's real, of a professor who gave a final exam to his students and put a black dot on the paper and asked them to write what they saw. And they all wrote on the bottom they saw a black dot and handed in their papers. And of course, the professor gave them a failing grade. He says, what you failed to see, everybody who saw, wrote that they saw a black spot, but what you failed to notice was all the white space around it. We get drawn to negativity, and we define ourselves often by it. We get drawn to the black spot, and then we reinterpret everything in light of that black spot. In the case of the Jews, it could very well be that they would see the black spot instead of the redemption that's coming. In the case of Mitzrayim, they would see Moshe's quote-unquote error and lie and deceive themselves regarding Moshe Rabbeinu and try to hold on to the reality of life as they knew it. But this is the challenge. Moshe Rabbeinu said midnight-ish because he wanted to avoid this problem, because it is the human impulse to act in this way. We have the benefit of hindsight, And with that benefit, we must challenge ourselves every day to see the grand white space and not focus on the black, not to ignore it, but not to allow the small negativity or even the large negativity to define us when there's so much white space to be seen. Midnight-ish is one solution. Another solution is to challenge ourselves every day to see reality as it is and to live with the hope and the promise and the trust in Hashem for a greater, brighter tomorrow. Good Shabbos.